Welcome to the Resilient Retail Game Plan, a podcast for anyone wanting to start, grow or scale a profitable creative product business with me, Catherine Erdley. The Resilient Retail Game Plan is a podcast dedicated to one thing, breaking down the concepts and tools that I've gathered from 20 years in the retail industry and showing you how you can use them in your business. This is the real nuts and bolts of running a successful product business, broken down in an easy, accessible way. This is not a podcast about learning how to make your business look good. It's the tools and techniques that will make you and your business feel good. Confidently plan, launch and manage your products, and feel in control of your sales numbers and cash flow to help you build a resilient retail business. Welcome back to another episode of the Resilient Retail Game Plan. Hi, I'm your host, Catherine Erdley, as well as the founder of the Resilient Retail Club, which is my mastermind and membership for product businesses. Find out more at resilientretailclub.com. Today we have a special guest joining us. Charlotte Broadbent is joining us from Faire, an exciting platform that is helping independent retailers navigate the challenging retail landscape. In today's episode, we dive into the world of Faire, a global wholesale marketplace that is revolutionising the way independent retailers source and sell products. Charlotte shares insights into the current state of the retail industry, the challenges faced by both major retailers and independents, and how Faire is providing a lifeline for small businesses. From decreased footfall to financial constraints, independent retailers have been hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic and the following cost of living crisis. But amidst the chaos, there is hope. Charlotte sheds light on the resilience of independent retailers and how technology and platforms like Faire can be game changers in helping them not just survive, but thrive. Join us as we explore the unique advantages that independent retailers possess, the power of experiential retail, and the importance of community connections. Plus, discover how Faire's innovative approach is levelling the playing field and empowering independent retailers to compete with larger players. So whether you're a seasoned retailer looking for new ways to adapt or an aspiring business owner eager to learn the ropes, this episode is packed with practical advice and inspiring stories that will help you develop your resilient retail game plan. Tune in now to explore the world of Faire and discover the endless possibilities for independent retailers. Charlotte, thank you so much for joining me today. Do you want to introduce yourself, Faire, and what you do there?
Sure, Catherine, thank you so much for having me on the show. Really looking forward to the discussion today. So I lead Faire's operations in the UK, and Faire was one of the first, and I think we're actually the biggest global wholesale marketplace. And being an online platform, we've revolutionized and transformed the way that wholesale operates, really, specifically for independent retailers. They used to be forced to shop twice a year, seasonal, in bulk. And now with our platform, they can do that shopping 24/7 online. We often hear from customers that they love shopping on Faire from the bath or with a cup of tea in bed at night. And it used to be an industry that largely operated offline, but we're using technology and the power of technology to bring that online. To give you a sense of scale, we've now got 700,000 retailers buying on the platform worldwide. 45,000 of those are in the UK, and those retailers are able to shop from brands across 150 countries and over 100,000 brands. So we have a really wide selection. But more than just about shopping, I think we're trying to give those independent retailers the opportunity to compete with the big boys and level the playing field, really, by giving them opportunity to scale their business. And we also give them some financial resources that aren't available elsewhere.
That's amazing. And those numbers are quite staggering. And I was going to say, do you feel that one of the big benefits for independent retailers specifically is that sense of discovery then, to be able to discover new brands?
Yeah, absolutely. When I talk to retailers, the benefit of being independent is that they are independent. They want to have products that can't be found elsewhere. They need to look and feel different. And while I think experiential might be the most overused word in retail, that actually independent retailers are the best possibly positioned to deliver that to customers. And they do that by providing newness and something that customers can't find elsewhere. And something we spend a lot of time thinking about is how to help retailers in that discovery process. So we have filters that help them narrow down by values-based shopping. Not on Amazon is our most used filter, which probably won't surprise you, although that's not
No.
important to everyone. We also have women-owned, LGBT-owned businesses, allow retailers to refine based on very local brands and price points, and help them through that discovery process, so that while it sounds almost overwhelming when I quote those big numbers, 100,000 brands, but actually I think we do a good job of helping them whittle down to what's good for them.
Yeah, no, that's such a good point. They've got the choice, but then they've also got the tools to help them narrow down. And of those 100,000 brands, how many of them themselves do you think are the smaller brands?
Well, we're all independent brands, so it tends to be things that you're not going to see in John Lewis. But a lot of those have maybe started out on Faire as a small brand, but used our platform to build up stockists and leverage that to get into the multiples. So we really help them through that journey and access new distribution channels. But we're definitely about the independent brands as well. It's not stuff that you're going to see generally in the supermarkets.
Got it. So the whole platform is there to really support the independent retailers, which I love, and help them discover the products that really suit them and suit their beliefs. But of course, we all know the cost of living crisis. It's one of those things that's constantly in the news. So how do you feel that independent retailers are doing right now?
Look, there's no denying that it's incredibly tough out there. I think it's probably one of the most challenging times in retail history, but it probably feels like we've been saying that for a while.
Yes, I feel like I've been saying that for a while.
Yeah, retailers have been through the ringer. During COVID, particularly brick and mortar stores, they were forced to shut while still covering all of their fixed costs like rent and energy bills. And now in this kind of new crisis, there's even more cost pressures from those things, but they've also got to contend with trying to reach customers who themselves have smaller wallets and just less disposable income. I think something that I think puts this into perspective is we commissioned some research from Faire because we really wanted to understand what was going on out there. And we actually found that 20% of consumers are really worried about this, and they say they're going to be cutting back on shopping with independent retailers. But I actually felt very positive about that, because it meant that there's 80% out there who still want to shop with them.
Yeah.
But I think providing value in this context, and that might mean kind of trading up and down or providing a bigger range, it is really important. And independent retailers versus the big boxes have that agility where they can react in these kind of choppy waters. They don't have fixed ways of doing things, long supply chains, lots of rules around bringing on new suppliers. They can react very quickly. So I think there's lots to be optimistic about how they're positioned in this market, albeit that's not to take away from it being a very tough backdrop to be operating in. And I speak to customers all the time, and they tell me that footfall is down and that they're having to find ways to do more with less, which they were already having to do. So it is tough.
It is tough, even more with less. And are you seeing that reflected? So presumably from your end, you can see some sorts of product trends across the platform. Do you see then that people are maybe pivoting slightly towards those kind of affordable treats, or is it not necessarily shown up like that in terms of what people are purchasing through Faire?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Because of our scale, we have access to an incredible amount of data, which helps us plan for what we need to do to help customers. I think from the very early days of Faire, we were kind of born out of a crisis in Europe because we launched here in 2021. So we're very familiar with helping people through those crises. And one of our kind of founding value props is that we want to help retailers try new things, but in a low risk way. So the trend that we're really seeing is retailers topping up and buying little and often, because that allows them to reduce their risk when buying into a new brand and trying to see, what sell-through is actually looking like before they do that. a story that I heard from one of our London retailers who has a number of stores recently is that she switched to thinking about things in offering in at different price levels. So candles, for instance, which I think I would wager that we're probably one of the biggest sellers of candles in the UK these days. She will provide to her customers a candle at the £5, the £15, and the £25 range. So it's giving that kind of breadth for customers to buy into, and that definitely comes out in our data of retailers wanting to be more agile, whereas in the past, making that commitment twice a year to seasonable buying, retailers were perhaps be buying for all of Christmas now. That's really scary and nerve-wracking, and it actually I think hindered their ability to try something new because they wanted to have a track record with the brand and know how things would sell. So I think while the reason that they're adapting in this way to little and often is probably financially driven, I think it's also good for customers as well because they're able to provide newness and a unique product experience.
Yes, it's so true. And I always say this about the best sales strategy is a great product strategy. And if you've got the product and it's something new and different, but you can do it in a way without overcommitting yourself, then that does make a big difference. That really takes me back to my days of working in multi-million-pound retailers, the whole price architecture, the entry, mid and exit price point we used to talk about a lot. And so it may even be that where you think of like a candle, it could be a mid-price point, but they're almost looking at a price architecture even across the categories. So, because people still have money to spend. They may not have as much, but there is definitely money being spent out there. So it's how you can work with your customer to achieve that at a range of price points.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're really proud to support that. I think some of these, thinking about pricing architecture, thinking about marketing, that has been previously the focus of major retailers. Actually, independents are able to do it better in these circumstances. And you'd have thought probably that the major retail players like you've worked with would be best placed to weather the storm. But actually, we can see that they're in trouble. I think something I found interesting was that over the last 7 years, I think 50% of department stores have disappeared in the UK, which is really a staggering figure. And the trend we're clearly seeing is, Mike Ashley's Frasers Group picking up household names that have gone bust. There's real trouble in that space. So while there's undeniable challenges, I feel optimistic that actually our retailers are really well set up to be agile in these choppy waters, and leveraging technology and platforms like Faire, I think can really help them with that, because we're giving them tools and financial resources to go into the second half of this year with confidence.
So you mentioned then, we've kind of touched on this already, but in how independent retailers can compete. So you talked about being more agile. Are there any other ways that you think that independent retailers can take advantage of the fact that the bigger retailers are maybe not having the best time? And what are some of the areas that you think they can focus on to really leverage that?
Yeah, I love this question. So thank you for asking it. I think one of the reasons I loved retail, and I've been working in and around it for well over 10 years now, is that particularly discretionary retail is as much about winning hearts as minds. And independent retailers are so much better positioned for that than the big boys, because they can provide a kind of really special experience to their customers. They can leverage the proximity of being close to homes, and as turning over stock and giving consumers some delight in their day. And I think that Faire, we really want to help our retailers delight their customers. I think it's not a cliche to say that lots of independent retailers often double as important community hubs. We think that at least a quarter of our retailers actually have dedicated event space to do that.
Oh, wow.
Ashley from Bless in Stoke Newington, who I met recently, does this really well. She hosts events for the local community. She is a death doula and is supporting people through sickness. So she's doing it very intentionally, and just a really inspirational example of someone who's using Faire to stock their store. But actually, I think many more of our retailers are doing that coincidentally by just providing a friendly face and a chair and sometimes a cup of tea. So I think all of that really helps them compete. And we've seen retailers really embrace technology and digital innovation to compete here. I think probably before the pandemic, less than 20% of our retailers would have had an online offering. And omni-channel is really what consumers expect now. And today, I think over 70% of Faire retailers have an online presence. And that trend, I think, will continue because customers are demanding it.
Well, that's quite an eye-opening statistic. So 20% of independent retailers had a website before the pandemic, and now 70% of them. That is so fascinating. And I loved your statistic as well about the percentage that have an event space, because I was just thinking in my own consultancy, I work one-to-one with a number of bricks and mortar stores. And actually, you're right, a lot of them do run workshops or have events or are able to host something additional in the shop itself. And I think you're absolutely right when you said that about the community hub, that what can't Amazon do? We talked a little bit about like what's not on Amazon, but also what can't Amazon do? And Amazon is not going to act as sit with the community through sickness and support them in the same way as the Stoke Newington store. And maybe I'm rose-tinted glasses, but I do feel excited for independent retailers. I do know it's tough, but I think that's, like you said, that's a brilliant way of saying it. They're winning people's hearts.
Yeah, we hear about that all the time. And something that we talk about at Faire is that we want to free up retailers' time from sourcing stock and going to trade shows and dealing with invoices and finding shipping partners and all of that, which is actually not what they got into the retail business to do at all. And allow them to free up time to actually focus on that customer experience and give consumers a reason to come into their store. And they've just got so many creative ways of doing that.
That's fantastic. So let's talk more specifically then about what you're doing at Faire. So it sounds like obviously you are talking to a lot of independent retailers regularly, which is brilliant. How do you help them specifically through Faire?
Yeah, sure. So as I mentioned, we're all about kind of harnessing the power of technology and now having this really global and giant marketplace really to help retailers source products, finance them and manage all of the admin headache that goes around that. And of course, delight these customers that they've got to give lots of reasons to coming into store. So things we do is that we will give retailers credit terms where brands might not be able to afford to do that directly, typically 60 days. And what that really allows the retailers to do is to have a really good go at selling through stock before they have to pay for it. And because of our scale, we can afford to pay out the brands immediately. So we're freeing up cash in the system, which I think is really important to everyone.
Yeah.
And then because we want to encourage retailers to try something new for the first time and allow brands to make new connections with customers, we have low minimum order quantities, which I know is a headache for some retailers when they're unsure about trying something new because they need to buy at 500 or £1,000 level. Our average order quantity, minimum order quantity, is around £150, which is really low and allows retailers to try something new. And if it doesn't work out and they've tried something for the first time, we'll cover the cost of the free returns so that the brand gets paid and the retailer can move on. So we're taking risk out of the system and allowing retailers to be more creative. And then I think just by having this giant marketplace, retailers can really stand out from the crowd. We've mentioned that they don't want to have the same selection as the person next door. They want to be able to curate the inventory. And the retailers that I meet are incredible buyers, and their shops are normally an extension of them and their personality. But having the selection that we have on Faire, they can be buying some really interesting soap from Provence and trying a chili oil from Brooklyn. And they really do that. And I think that just elevates and augments the retail experience that they're able to provide. And then, as I mentioned, among all this selection, we help them them filter down to what's really relevant for them, whether that's by price point, shipping time. If they need something really quickly, they're able to locate that. Lots of UK retailers only want to buy local, and actually independent retail has been powering that trend of shopping local. So we really help them support that without the kind of shoe leather of having to go around and meet individual suppliers. They're able to connect on our platform. And I will say it's not as sexy, but I hope your listeners will appreciate it, that we've invested an awful lot into reducing the admin headaches for retailers who we know are time poor. It's often a one-person team or a one-person team with some part-time support. So we have simplified invoicing systems. We have whole teams of people who spend all day thinking about that, which, enough said on that, but it's a headache that retailers don't need. And we negotiate shipping partnerships with carriers and are able to negotiate really good rates so that they get the benefit of the many, but for their individual shop.
No, that's fantastic. And you say it's not sexy, but it is such a headache for people that I'm sure everyone who has benefited from having streamlined paperwork has very much appreciated that. I just want to ask you, I was curious if you've got any stats on this, or is there anything that you ask your independent retailers? But you mentioned there about trade shows. So obviously you've got the discovery element, which is what a lot of people use trade shows for. Do you have any stats about how many of your Faire retailers also would visit a trade show to buy, or is that not something you track?
We do track it, and actually I've been to 2 shows this week, so I've met our brands there in particular, but also some of our retailers. I think that the in-person connection and being able to touch and feel product, particularly in some categories, food and drink, for instance, that's always going to be there. But it's certainly an industry that was completely on pause during COVID, and now in kind of a cash constrained environment for independent brands, investing in a booth is a huge outlay when you're not kind of guaranteed orders, or you have question marks around footfall. So I think that it's still something that's important for them. But if I think about the 2 trade shows I went to this week, they have a small few hundred of brands that are on display there. So if I'm a retailer shopping there and I hear this direct from them, I'm concerned that I'm going to come out with a selection that looks quite similar to someone else. So I do think that our customers have found huge value in being able to shop from new brands that they can't find elsewhere.
Yeah, sure, that makes a lot of sense. So have you got any examples then? You mentioned a couple of independent retailers already, but how about some examples of independent retailers who specifically have shifted to using Faire and how that's worked for them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've got 45,000 in the UK, so there's too many to mention, and it's a bit like picking your favorite child.
How many? Do you know how many independent retailers there are overall? Do you know what that's a percentage as a percentage? I'm just curious. I'll put you on the spot here now.
No, obviously we think a lot about that and what the market looks like and whether it's growing. So we think there's about 200,000 independent retailers in the UK.
Okay, yeah.
That can look and feel different because it depends on whether you want to include specialty grocery,
right,
corner shops. The definition is quite tricky, but that's kind of the number that I anchor on.
Yeah,
you can see, given that this is really a revolutionary way of buying, that actually we've made incredible progress in connecting with that market.
Yeah,
I think that if I was to mention some, the ones that stand out for me is a good chunk of our retailers were actually born out of the pandemic and have only known this chaos. We interviewed the amazing Corinne from Hackney Essentials recently, and she started her business on Columbia Road during the pandemic as an essentials store. Now that we're on the other side of it, she is getting to expand into categories that you probably consider less essential, but are absolutely lovely, and she's got an incredible eye. But she told us that she sees having her store in this environment almost as an act of resistance. I love that. So what Faire helped her do was do that initial stock buy. When you're a new retailer, a new business, and perhaps you don't have experience in that, generally, the customers tell us that the banks aren't there for them, and they'll have limited credit lines or they're using personal credit cards. But she was able to use Faire to build up that first critical stock buy and has really grown from strength to strength. And we'll share the link to the blog post and the article with Corinne, because she is really inspirational.
Well, that's fantastic. Yeah, and so she's built the whole shop off Faire.
She's used Faire to build her business and buy that initial stock buy. I'm sure
Yes.
she's also buying from other
Yes.
artisans. I wouldn't say that she's only buying from Faire, but she's definitely a big fan.
Yes, sure. Sorry, I misspoke, but yes. So the first opening package. No, that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, if you want to hand us the link, then we can put that into the show notes so people can go check it out and read it in more detail. So, what do you think then? Well, obviously, we talked about it's been a tumultuous time, to put it very mildly.
Yeah.
What do you think's coming next for independent retailers?
Well, I know your listeners will probably be well aware that the C word, Christmas, is top of mind for all retailers at the moment. And I am seeing retailers shopping differently, topping up in as they get towards Christmas rather than buying everything now. Values-based shopping is something that we see is increasingly important, and it's driven by consumer demand, and people really care about where they're sourcing products and want to know about provenance and what the story is about a brand and what they're buying into. And I think wholesale in general is getting sexy again. It was maybe a swear word, to be honest, a few years ago. I used to run a jewelry brand and retailer, and we got major pushback from our shareholders when we wanted to grow our wholesale business, because D2C was the place to be. But I think it's now become much more expensive to be D2C. The cost of acquiring customers is prohibitive quite often, and more businesses are looking to enter wholesale to find a kind of quality and sustainable distribution model, which I think particularly independents provide.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think that it's always, fluctuations in the market, but the whole kind of the golden days of e-commerce during the pandemic. I mean, who knew that the pandemic was going to, when you look back in hindsight, for people who were selling e-commerce, was going to be this sort of boom time. And I think that I've always said the brands that I work with, because I work with both brands, but also independent retailers, but the brands that I work with, the ones that have that robust multi-channel strategy where they do have a direct consumer element, but they also have a wholesale element, they are always the ones that manage to weather the storm the best, basically. And I'm really glad to hear you talk about values-based shopping, because I've had a few conversations with people recently where they've been wondering if, in the face of cost of living pressures, if people are more likely to abandon their values in the pursuit of value rather than. So it's good to hear that provenance and the story and all of that is still really important to the customer.
Yeah, I think value for money is crucial, and providing that is part of what a retailer is expected to do. But I don't think that consumers are doing that at the cost of caring about where their products are from. And in fact, if they're buying less and more intentionally, that probably matters even more, because when they go into an independent retailer, they're expecting that level of quality, and that's really what comes through in our data when we see that not on Amazon is our most popular product tag. and I think independent retail just really remains a kind of firm choice for customers, and it's an incredibly powerful market. We sometimes think about it as the long tail because it's lots of small businesses, but when you add them all together, it's a $1 trillion market. So they're really powerful, and I think that they should only expect to grow.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. Do you want to tell us more about where people can find out about Faire?
Absolutely. Thank you. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. So your listeners can visit faire.com to find out more about how we can help their business, whether they're a retailer or a brand. And thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Why not head over to Instagram? Let me know, do you use Faire? Have you thought about it? Do you sell on Faire? What are your thoughts about the platform and how it has helped you in your business? And of course, don't forget, if you have a moment to rate and review the podcast, then it does make a big difference in terms of getting the podcast out there in front of more people. And of course, if you subscribe or follow the podcast, you'll be the first to know about every new episode. If you've enjoyed this week's episode, then I invite you to check out resilientretailclub.com. The Resilient Retail Club is the membership for anyone wanting to start, grow, or scale a profitable product business. No more trawling Google trying to find the answers to your questions or wading through general business advice that speaks mainly to service-based businesses. Whether you're still at the idea stage or you've been going for a while but want to get more focused and organised when it comes to your business, the Resilient Retail Club is the place for you. With a library of courses tailored to creative product businesses, several live sessions a month, and a supportive and active community, the Resilient Retail Club is the perfect membership to help you hit your goals faster. Check it out at resilientretailclub.com.